12 U.S. casualties, 3 of which were killed. Most of the damage to me was to my right leg. I took 5 or 6 rounds to it, which basically vaporized it. This was the initiation of a pre-planned complex ambush where we didn't know there were about 30 Taliban fighters that had our compound almost entirely surrounded. They all began launching mortars and RPG rockets and belt-fed machine gun down on top of us, and most of the detachment was down. My femoral artery had been severed, my femur was shattered, so I'm working on myself amongst this chaos that's erupting around us. Laying there dying, watching these young kids execute on these tasks that we had spent months training them on, and watching these young kids go to work to save us. And for me, like that would have been a beautiful death. I would have been fine with that.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
All right, today we welcome a guest whose story defines resilience and determination. Nick the Machine Lavery is an active duty U.S. Army Special Forces operator, commonly known as a Green Beret, and the first above-the-knee amputee in military history to return to combat operations. In 2013, during his second deployment to Afghanistan, Nick and his detachment were victims of an insider attack, resulting in severe injuries that led to the loss of his right leg. Following numerous surgeries and years of rehab at Walter Reed, Nick refused medical retirement and set his sights on returning to operational status. And by 2015, he had achieved this goal, redeploying to Afghanistan and continuing to serve with distinction. Nick has been awarded the Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, 1 with a V device for valor, and the Special Operations Command Excalibur Award, among others. Beyond his military achievements, Nick is a husband, father, speaker, and author of Objective Secure, the Battle-Tested Guide to Goal Achievement. Nick, brother, an absolute honor to have you here with us, man.
It's my pleasure, man. And you just knocked out that intro, John. You're like a seasoned veteran over here, bro. Crushed it. Well done. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thanks. It's taken a little time to get to this level.
Yeah, just 5 years, man. 5 years.
Just 5 years.
That's it.
5 years, like 200 some episodes later, you know. But,
Finally getting it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Nick. I just want to let our audience know about, hey, if you're curious about attaining a better mood, physical health, and mental clarity, then check out our new show sponsor, Nourish. That's Neurish. It's a once daily powder supplement that could upgrade your health from the inside out. To learn more about that, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com. And when you do head to mentalkingmindfulness.com, why not check out our Spartan race that we're doing as a team? Nick, maybe join us down in Texas on October 19th. We're doing a 5K down there. We have a team, that you can sign up for, and we'd love to, get our people together, get our community together down there in Texas on October 19th. And once again, everything that you want to check out is at mentalkingmindfulness.com. Nick, we already warned you about our opening practice. It's just one breath.
Warned.
I know. Just got.
Love it. Yeah, let's do it.
I know exactly. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, right? Maybe sit up nice and tall. It really helped open up the chest so you can feel more of, open your lungs for more breath. And let's just start with one exhale out. Really get empty. And let's take a big giant inhale into your belly. All the way up to the chest, to the head. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Exhale out your mouth. Nice and easy. Slow, slow, slow. And all right, everybody, let's come back. And Nick, so great to have you here.
Boom. Love that.
Nick, man, hey, your journey, it's crazy. It's a journey from that life-altering insider attack. So for those of you who do not know what an insider attack is, that's basically when we work with the host nation, working with the Afghan army, the Afghan police, and there was some type of insider attack there where one of them attacked the U.S. forces. We call them green on blue insider attacks, that type of thing. So, that life-altering attack and then returning to active combat, that's just unheard of. It's crazy. And that's a severe understatement. If somebody listens to this show and they get nothing else from it, if they listen just to the first 5 minutes, what core message do you hope listeners take away from your experience?
Man, I love how you asked this bottom line up front. Given the short attention span that a lot of us are tending to get more and more just to be the way it is. It could be gold for an hour, but
exactly
after 9 minutes. So yeah, let's make sure we leave something lasting from the very beginning.
Amen.
A lot comes to mind, John. But I'll tell you what my heart is speaking to me right now when you ask that question, is just the importance of discipline. And kind of the ironic part of that maybe is how often I am thanked or kind of labeled as a motivational individual or a motivational speaker, or thank you for the motivation, which is a blessing and it's an honor.
Sure.
And it's something to be appreciated. I have an interesting relationship with motivation, which is hence the irony, is that I think it's a great thing when you have it. And it's something that I certainly strive to achieve and gain on a daily basis. But the hard bottom line is if you are only executing on the things that you need to do when you are motivated to do it, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose bad. And really, you're going to lose to the person or the team that is willing to do what needs to be done, particularly when they don't feel like it, which is a great, simple definition of discipline. So I would put that at the foundation of a warrior mindset, at the foundation of goal achievement, at the foundation of human performance and growth and success and winning and victory and all these terms that we use. I would put that as the basement, and then the rest of the house is kind of built on top of that.
I love it, man. I'm similar, and there's been times when I haven't been motivated, and a lot of those times I don't do things unless I tap into my discipline, and then I find when I do the thing, that's when the motivation actually comes. It's like you get to the gym. It's sometimes it's really hard to get to the gym. You don't have the motivation, but the discipline is there. And then once you start lifting, once you start running, you're like, all right, this feels good. This is where I'm supposed to be. Then the motivation comes. It's not, you don't do the thing, or rather you don't get the motivation and then do the thing. You do the thing and then motivation comes, is what I've found.
Yeah, it's great. It's like motivation to me, man, is an increased desire to do something, which again can bring value. I think it's more like throwing some kerosene on top of a fire that's already somewhat burning and somewhat lit. And it just makes that fire more intense, and ROI can go up, value can go up, intensity can go up, and you can extract some additional value out of doing the thing. So it's a great thing to have, but it's not the fire itself. I'd say the fire, using this analogy, is built through disciplined initiative and work, and going out and cutting down the tree and chopping it up into small pieces and dragging it to your shelter. Like, you don't necessarily feel like doing that, but that's how the fire is built. And then when you can find those little bursts of motivation, it's great and you can reap the benefit. But again, if we're only doing those hard things when we're at a peak motivation, then what's the sustainability of that? So, I mean, and oftentimes I just want to say here real quickly, guys, it's like when people hear that, they tend to go into this like absolute mentality where it's always or never. And like these terms are rarely used accurately. It's like no one's suggesting that you need to bat 1,000. No one's perfect. Like there are going to be moments when your fatigue wins, your laziness wins. Like you procrastinate, you hit the snooze button. Like those things are going to happen even for some of the most disciplined human beings on the planet, myself in particular. So no one's suggesting perfection. No one is suggesting you're going to bat 1,000. I would just simply argue you want to be executing more often than not. And that's a great glide path to be on.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that, man. Cause a lot of the time when you do talk about, not you specifically, but just generally, when people speak about discipline, they're thinking if you're not batting 1,000, like you said, it's the all or nothing. Like, hey, if you're not in the gym at 4:30 a.m. crushing your soul, then you may as well not go at all, and you may as well add a gallon of ice cream and a giant large pizza on top. So true.
That's what John does.
So true.
That's what John does sometimes.
It's a dial, not a switch, right?
Yeah, right.
Well
True.
said.
And I think it's like, we forget that the best baseball players, right, are batting 400. They're 40% successful, you know what I mean, at their attempts. But it's a matter of like, get your ass to the plate so you can actually take the swing. Like that's the game. And that's where really discipline lies so much, especially as you're saying, Nick, when you don't, want to go there. Like that's when when I don't want to go and I show up instead, that's when I've received like the most gains, the most insight, the most strength, the most inspiration. The next thing that can, come into my mind because I'm showing up and putting in the work. But let's go back. Jon teed up this insider attack back in 2013. Could you take us through that story and then like the aftermath, if you will, like the thoughts, the decisions you had to face like through such a terrible incident?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the quick version is one of the Afghan National Police officers that we've been working with. He turned on us just before us loading up our vehicles, opened up a PKM belt-fed machine gun against me and my team from about 25 feet away. And certainly Jon and many of the listeners are probably familiar with that weapon system and how powerful it is.
Yeah, is that like a large round? I'm not familiar. It's like,
Yeah, it's a large caliber machine gun. I mean, it could rip a soft skinned vehicle to shreds from 400 or 500 meters away easily. So 30 feet against human flesh, and it's quite catastrophic. 12 U.S. casualties, 3 of which were killed. Most of the damage to me was to my right leg. I took 5 or 6 rounds to it, which basically vaporized it. And then to make matters a little bit more interesting, this was the initiation of a pre-planned complex ambush where we didn't know there were about 30 Taliban fighters that had our compound almost entirely surrounded. So when this guy initiated from inside our perimeter, they all began launching mortars and RPG rockets and belt-fed machine gun down on top of us. And most of the detachment was down. And one of the things I like to highlight, whether I'm talking to a military audience or not, is, and Jon, you may agree with me on this, man. It's, going back 20 years in the GWAT era, and for good reason, this is understandable. These are counter-terrorist operations. These are counterinsurgency operations. Those are 2 core missions of Special Operations Command. Like, that is literally what we're there to do. So because of that, we were literally and figuratively operating at kind of the tip of the spear. And I think one of the downsides of that is how over the last 20 or so years, a lot of our conventional brothers and sisters have been kind of marginalized maybe a little bit or overlooked a little bit, where it's like, if you weren't like a Green Beret or Delta Force operator or SEAL, like, you might as well not even have been there. Like, it was just, these were the guys doing the thing and you guys were all just kind of hanging around. And that's nothing is farther from the truth. And I see that a lot as I engage with service members and with veterans, how they feel that they need to like prove themselves to themselves and then to others. And I'm like, dude, you're amongst the 0.5%. Like, you are a wild outlier. I don't care what you did during your military service. Like, none of this works without all of the pieces working together. I can't do what I do. Jon can't do what he did without you guys doing what you do. And I bring that up because in this story, in this event that happened, a lot of the team guys were down, and it was really our infantry uplift. We had about 15 infantry soldiers and a handful of other enablers. Those are the guys that saved us. I mean, they went to work and they literally repelled overwhelming firepower on this ambush that could have very easily ended in all of our deaths. So I just like to highlight that point, that those guys are the one. Without them, without those 17, 18, 19-year-old infantry soldiers just straight up handling business, you and I aren't having this conversation right now.
Yeah, man. Amen. And thank you for saying that, because I speak with one. I hate the term conventional forces, right? I mean, it's like, it just marginalizes them there, right? Just that term sounds so almost derogatory. And then when I do speak to infantry, when I speak to, sailors in the Navy, they say, I was just infantry. And I'm like, whoa. You didn't, it's not just, you raised your right hand, you volunteered to serve this great country. And I'm thankful for everybody, man, woman, who has done that. So I'm glad you brought that up. And hell yeah, man, it sounds like those guys really put up a fight to save you guys that were down. So very thankful for that, man.
Dude, I can tell you, as I was laying there treating myself medically, my femoral artery had been severed, my femur was shattered. So I'm working on myself amongst this chaos that's erupting around us. Tourniquets. I end up doing an internal pressure dressing on myself, which is just a wild
and you're
experience.
writhing in pain, I'd imagine. Tremendous pain, right?
It's funny you mentioned that, Will, and it's a question I get often. It's like, was it painful? And it's at a certain point, the pain did kick in. And when I say it kicked in, I mean, it came in like a freight train, but it was actually quite a bit of a delay before I started to feel any kind of actual like physical discomfort. It was the adrenaline and kind of the shock that both mentally and physiologically shock kind of protects you from that pain in the immediate sense. So I was able to get a lot of work done on myself before that pain threshold really kicked in. But as I was laying there and I'm performing all this medical aid on myself, and I kind of looking up, and I'm convinced that I'm going to die. Like I knew with certainty that this was my last day on earth. And just watching those young soldiers that we had spent months training and doing battle drills with and training them on different weapon systems, different platforms. And most of them were very young kids on their first deployment ever. And they're attached to an ODA working in Wardak. I mean, like getting into contact on a daily basis. Like you want to talk about just an amazing dynamic for everyone, really. But laying there dying, watching these young kids execute on these tasks that we had spent months training them on, it's a moment I will certainly never forget. And I don't know if it was until my first son was born that I had ever felt that amount of like love and pride and respect for watching these young kids go to work to save us. And for me, like that would have been a beautiful death. I would have been fine with that.
Wow, man.
Hey.
Yeah. Holy cow. Where do we even go from there? Yeah. Well, I can imagine, or rather, I can't even imagine, man. Like the combat that I saw was relatively benign compared to what you've just mentioned. But the piece that we want to get into next is the mindset, right? Like the mindset of what you just covered, the mindset to be working on yourself. But then the next step is you get into Walter Reed, you're medically evacuated from Afghanistan, you're finally there in Walter Reed, you're offered the opportunity to medically retire. But how did your mindset change and then evolve during that period? And at what point did you say, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not medically retiring. I want to go back to war. I want to return to duty. And I mean, walk us through that piece.
Yeah, and I want to be a little critical of the words you just used, John.
Okay,
and
yeah,
like,
go
when
for
you
it.
say the Army offered me a full medical retirement, they really weren't offering me anything.
Okay.
They were very deliberate about forcing me to medically retire and forcing me into civilian life. You know, it took a minute. I was at Walter Reed for a year before that med board process started. Eventually, once I would get back to Fort Bragg. But to answer your question, I had made up my mind. I had made the decision. I put that in quotes here, and you'll understand why in a second. That I was going to return back to the teams when I was in the intensive care unit at Walter Reed. It may actually have been the only thing that I could see crystal clear and had complete and total understanding of. Because I mean, I'm on all the pain management drugs. I'm on huge doses of ketamine. I'm in and out of surgery. I'm anesthesia. Like I barely know what's real and what's not. But that vision was so crystal clear and so obvious to me that it may be the one thing that I knew to be real. And I saw it quite simply, which is why I say it was an option, because it was. But I had two options on the table. One was roll over and die, which is always an option for us, regardless of your circumstances. And then the other one was you will figure out a way to get back to doing what you do. And it's important to know, excuse me, that this time in my life, and things have changed to me since then. This is almost 13 years ago. Being a Green Beret, being a professional war fighter on behalf of the society really wasn't what I did. It was who I was.
Right.
Like my entire identity was roped up in this one function. I believed this through and through with all my heart and soul, that I was put on this planet to do one thing and one thing only. And it was this was it. So it made those options quite simple for me. And I don't do very well with the whole rolling over and dying thing. So it's like, this is the only other one that's left. So I, of course, didn't have a clue as to how I would do that, but I did decide my what. And I just think as I've had a chance to work with different organizations and people, both in the military and out across the country, it's just how few individuals actually have a crystal clear image of their mission, of what they're trying to accomplish or who they're trying to be. And like without that, it's like if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Like knowing what that is, I think, is a very important first step in being able to operationalize action to start moving in that direction. So the decision for me was made, excuse me, from the very beginning. And then just to kind of blitz through a little bit, because you mentioned transition, like how did that change over time? Once I started getting back into the game and I get through my med board, I was working as a combatives instructor. I was teaching CQB and I was like training like a maniac to try to eventually get back onto the teams. It was very self-centered for a while. In fact, for the first like 18 or so months of what would be about a 2-year time period from point of injury to returning back into Afghanistan, about 18 months of that, it was basically about me being competitive and needing to come back and win. Like, there's no way this is how this chapter of my life is going to end. There's no way I'm going to lose under these circumstances. That is just unacceptable. I'm going to find a way to come back and make you regret not killing me when you had the chance. And like, maybe that's shallow. You know, I don't really know, but I do know it was powerful enough to keep me going through a lot of really hard times. And then where that transition happened was as I eventually started going through this recertification process, which took about 13 weeks, and I was doing anywhere from like 2 to 4 tests or assessments a week, just like boom, 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 boom. At some point during that, I had this epiphany, and it scared the hell out of me because I realized I was going back to a team. And that I, of course, had known that, but I really wasn't looking at it through like the team lens until that moment. And I felt like a horrible person. I felt like a complete piece of shit. I was like ridden with guilt. And I went into work and I knocked on the team room door and I was like, guys, you know, can I have 5 minutes? And they're like, yeah, of course. Like, what's up, man? And I tell them like, listen, have you guys even really thought about this? Like, I am so obsessed. I'm looking through this soda straw with this obsessive tunnel vision and I apologize. I haven't seen it from your vantage point. And they were like, listen, man, we've had this conversation like a dozen times. And here's the hard truth is we don't know if this is going to work, but we want to be the ones to figure it out. And if by some miracle you're able to get back here and get back onto this team and then get back into the game with us, you know, Nick, that we are going to be the first ones to tell you or to make it obvious that this is not going to work. You are a liability and this just isn't the spot for you, despite how much we love you. And that kind of trust you have in that dynamic with that kind of camaraderie, I knew that to be true because we just don't have the luxury of it being in that gray area. It's like you either meet the standard and you're an asset or you're not, period. Like it is that simple. So what that allowed me to do was a couple things. One, I could put my trust in them to have that objective, logical vantage point because for me, it was highly emotional. And we all know that emotion and logic are antagonistic of each other. And there was really no way for me to make it less emotional because that's the way it was. I was fired up and passionate and obsessed. These guys will handle the logic. I'll remain hyper-focused and obsessed. And collectively, we'll be able to have an all-encompassing picture. And then the second thing it did for me was when I was going into my, third workout of the day, exhausted, when all the excuses are sounding the most convincing, rather than me thinking about that glorifying moment of getting back off the bird with both fingers in the air, screaming, I'm back, and you messed up. Rather than that, I was thinking about my teammate's 5-year-old son. I was thinking about my teammate's wife. And it's like, you need to do this session now, not for you, but for them. And that took what was already a pretty high degree of output to like a whole nother level.
Yeah, again, I can only imagine, man, like that. Envisioning the potential of becoming a liability to the brothers that you love and not only to them, but taking it several layers deeper into their family. Man, talk about quote unquote motivation. That's hella motivation right there.
And like drawing you forward, like, thinking about others. Like, I know I've had many experiences where it's like, when I don't want to do something or I don't want to stay in extra or whatever, a few more minutes of uncomfortableness. It's like, no. How could I make this about something bigger than myself? But one thing I thought that that I really liked about your story is the fact that really what brought you forward and out and through this moment of tragedy, when you have a million excuses just to quit, is the competitive nature that you have and you developed over so many years of just becoming who you are. What was that internal, because you talked about like kind of needed to be selfish for a couple of years in order to get myself back to a place where I can actually put myself in a position to get back on the team. So what were you competing against like on that during those, first year or so as you began to literally like get back on your feet and start to walk again?
Yeah, I love how you asked this question, Will, because I'm of the opinion that, competition breeds results. Competition is the catalyst for progress. And many hear that. And their response could be likely out of a sense of fear or insecurity or fear of judgment is, well, I'm not competing against anybody. Like there is no competition. And I would push back against that. And I would say there may not be someone else out there right now that wants exactly what you have or wants exactly what you're striving for? Odds are there is. But let's just say for some reason that doesn't exist. At a minimum, you're competing with you. You're competing with the version of you from yesterday or from last month. And maybe more importantly, you're competing with the version of you of next week or next month. Should you remain stagnant? Should you give in to the temptation? Should you, continue to hit the snooze button? Should you choose like whatever choices you make? At a minimum, you're competing against yourself. And I would say that for me, it was more so that, because not only was there no one else like for me to pace myself alongside of, no one else was trying to pursue what I was trying to do. No one else had successfully done it, despite there had been several attempts from some other amazing human beings that I learned quite a bit from. There wasn't an external competitive force for me to look over and say, I'm going to beat you. Like that was just me. I was just looking in the mirror. So the competitive drive really came mostly by virtue of me competing against me, losing to myself quite often. But then by virtue of those failures and those setbacks, I was able to extract the wisdom that comes by virtue of getting things wrong, which is how we tend to learn most things, and then ram that back into a system and then just continue to go again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. Discipline. Just keep showing up. And here, well, you have any could you take us a little bit into what was that negative voice coming out that you needed to compete against? You have any, what are those kind of thoughts or feelings that were coming up? Is I can only imagine, you talked about, just even adjusting your prosthetic was a big hassle. I can, so what were some of those negative, or if they were negative, I got to imagine negative, what were some of those voices and feelings coming through?
Yeah. I mean, the self-doubt would come in just in droves, on a daily basis, usually at the immediate offset of some kind of failure or setback, where in me, I'm literally or figuratively face down on the ground again. And it's in that one moment where all those off-ramping opportunities just show up right there and then. Those soft spots to land, your brain is literally just giving them to you. Like, here you go. Like, here's the warm, comfortable blanket. Here's the belt. Like, it's like going through buds or going through selection. It's like, it's right. They literally put it right there in front of you and say, hey, like, this can all end right now.
Just now.
Do the one thing. And here you go. We'll get you a nice meal, a warm bed, a warm bus, some clean clothes, some sleep. It's right there. And so you just have to decide in those moments, and you usually only have maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds to kind of make that decision, or at least stall enough for you to kind of regain focus on your drive or your reasoning behind going through all this pain and suffering. It's like, if you can just maintain the position. We teach that in combatives, where a lot of guys, they want to do hand-to-hand. It's all about dominating and winning. But in tactical hand-to-hand combat, at times a win is just maintaining a positive position until support can come in. Like, if I'm moving down a wall and I get buried by somebody, a fighter wants to start throwing combinations and take this person out or take this person down. Sometimes a win for the team is just you holding that position and hanging on long enough until some resources can come in and help deal with the problem. In those moments of anguish and pain and suffering, oftentimes it's if I can just hang on 5, 6, 7 seconds, some support is going to show up, and that's going to be that vision of the big picture, the recognition of the value of the near-term task. I can just hang on long enough. That'll come to me, and then that's what I'll grab onto, and then boom, get right back in the game.
And like you said a couple times in this conversation, Nick, that's both literal and figurative, man.
Yeah.
There's so many figurative times in life where that battle, all we need is just enough to hold on until we get that support right there. So I love how you phrased that. So we've talked about, the rehab process, you at Walter Reed, the kind of the change in mentality once you went back to the team and you talked to them about what they're thinking, and you see it from their optic, and now you're using that as extra discipline in the gym, extra discipline everywhere else. Now you're actually returning to combat as an amputee, which as far as I understand, that's unprecedented. What specific challenges did you encounter, whether they be tactical, whether they be down into the weeds of about putting your prosthetic on? how did you address those? What were they and how did you address them?
Yeah, the list just continued to grow with every passing day. You know, when you try to replicate those environments, which we do in training and in assessments in a lot of different ways, you can get close, but you're never going to replicate the exact environment because the training and the game are going to be two different things. So a lot of the stuff I was going through with my train up and the assessments, a lot of that was done in a gym and on a track and in a pool. And there was some outdoors, like more tactical stuff, but it was not the same as being back in Afghanistan in August and it's 140 degrees out. And like you're dealing with a whole new set of challenges that myself nor a whole lot of other people really even considered to be. And within the first couple of days, I'm like, oh man, this is like I have a lot of gaps in my game that these were blind spots to us all that we're all learning in real time. And I'll give a couple examples, but what my team and I really had to do, which was the right call, was to take a very slow, iterative kind of crawl, walk, run approach to my employment in combat kinetic operations. It began with a whole separate means of risk assessment and risk calculus that we otherwise wouldn't really had done based on me at that time. And then over the duration of the 6-month period, by the end of that trip, I was really just another team guy. We would still be doing, the assessments and whatnot and putting me into certain positions to minimize risk, which is really what you do with the team in its entirety. But it started off very, very slow. And that was brutal for me. No team guy wants to be on the sidelines when the boys are going to work. That was brutal. But it was a necessary challenge to work through. One of the examples I give in this is just getting in and out of a MAT-V, which is one of our like larger armored vehicles. Now, the driver's hatch in a MAT-V sits maybe 12 feet up off the ground. Military vehicles are not built for comfort or convenience. So like the way in which you would climb up to get into this thing, you're talking about like some wire and like some little pieces of metal that you would use to like put your feet on and like grab it and like pull yourself in. As a two-legged guy, you just like scamper up and you're in like you're 2 seconds and you're good to go. The first time I went to get into a MAT-V was in Afghanistan on my first deployment as a one-legged guy. And I'm looking at this, I'm going, how am I going to do this? I literally just stopped in my tracks and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to negotiate this obstacle. And like with most things, it takes just deliberate, purposeful, practice. So they're using that one example that became a thing on the list, like get in and out of the MAT-V. Okay, got it. Me and my teammates, we got to a point where we would line up MAT-Vs next to each other and we would like race to get in. It's just like on a stopwatch, and I'd sit there and calculate like left foot here, right foot here, left hand here, just like jiu-jitsu or shooting or free throws. It's like you break it down technically, you figure out a way that looks like it might make sense. You try it a whole shitload of times, maybe make an adjustment or two and just keep going out time and time again. And I just kind of took a very simple mathematical approach to it. It's like, if I do this 100 times a day, then over the course of a couple of weeks, like I'll be into the thousands of reps and like I'll be good to go. So like that was it. And that was just one part of my op tempo in between training partner force and operations and internal team training. Like I had my own separate list of training tasks and requirements and like notebooks full of how I would go about skinning this cat. And then that would be my additional training. And that's just really what my first deployment looked like for 6 months. It was exhausting, to say the least. So when I got back from that trip, man, to say that I racked out for like a week straight would be probably something of an understatement.
Wow.
I bet, man. You're like Kobe Bryant, man, just going out and taking the thousands and thousands of shots on your own before the team even gets there. So I applaud your coming back to what we discussed at the very beginning, man, your discipline and intentionality behind it. And that example of getting into the MAT-V, again, that can be applied to life as a whole. Like what is it that our listeners are struggling with that maybe others are not? Well, what can you do intentionally to set yourself up for success in achieving that particular goal that you're going after? So, yeah, man, I love it. Will?
No, I mean, a lot of the subtext that we're kind of talking about and through here is humility. And, we had Jocko on the show last week, 2 weeks ago or something like that. Right.
Yeah,
And
2 weeks ago.
he really leaned into humility and how much it's changed him. And the humility even of your team, like having the willingness to come back and work with you is incredible. And what about your own humility and the patience is required in order to take on such a feat and actually and put yourself in danger, right? As like someone that's as an amputee. So yeah, what has been your experience and understanding, and how do you continually leverage humility today?
Could not possibly agree more. It doesn't surprise me that Jocko brings that up. He's been a mentor of mine for years, and it's surreal that I can refer to him as a friend and a colleague in many sense. Um, in my opinion, I think humility may be one of the superpowers of human performance, one of the superpowers of goal achievement that goes largely unnoticed. In fact, it could very easily get minimized by many of us because I think a lot make this miscorrelation that humility is synonymous with insecurity or weakness, meaning that if I display humility, then people are going to see that as me being insecure or that I'm weak, and I can't have that. So we overcompensate, and it becomes much more like ego driven, and which very quickly gets into the realm of cockiness and arrogance, which creates resentment. And like there's that cycle, and it's largely based on one's own interpretation of what others are viewing of them, which is why I think that when you can couple confidence and humility together, that may be one of the most powerful 1-2 punch combinations
That's
I know
awesome.
of.
Yeah.
As I advise commanders, as a Special Forces warrant officer, that's really my function, is to advise commanders and senior enlisted leaders. It's that. And really, whether I'm talking to a captain or a general, it's something that I'm continuously bringing up, is that 1-2 punch combo. Because I think once you start to earn authentic confidence, which I would argue is evidence-based, based off of a track record of developing skill and doing hard shit consistently, that's actual confidence. Like, confidence is not screaming positive affirmations into the mirror. Now, I've done that plenty of times.
It can
Like,
help.
self-talk and affirmations are a great thing, and it can help you do something scary or hot. Like the first time I jumped out of a plane at Fort Benning, I was literally doing that in the latrine the night before, giving myself this like pep talk, and it helps. But I wouldn't say that that's authentic confidence. But when you earn authentic confidence, then it enables you to just start to deploy humility, and that starts to work in a cycle, in a loop. And you start to see that amongst some of the greatest performers, the highest achievers. We work with pro athletes and tier 1 military units and law enforcement and Fortune 100 companies. And it's an undeniable theme amongst these individuals that they've operationalized that to a point where it's just part of their values. It's just part of their character. They don't have to try to flex it. It's automated because that's who they are. And you see that with repetition. It's like, this is an undeniable superpower. I think it's one that takes most of us some maturity, some time, some exposure, some experience, some wisdom, some failures, being around people that are better than you. So to express this to a 17-year-old kid is likely going to go in one ear and out the other. But I think if you plant those seeds early and eventually it starts to grow, it's like, oh, this is the way that I want to live.
And I would say, the inverse is true too, right? The people who don't have humility but have cockiness, they have that cockiness because of an insecurity, and they aren't truly confident. They want to wear this mask of confidence, but it's fake. And given the right amount of time, you're going to see that is fake. I mean, I've worked for leaders who are cocky, and after a couple weeks with them, maybe even a couple days, depending on who they are, you can see that it is just a facade, man. So you see through that pretty quickly. So let's push to this intentional failure, right? This talk, you've talked about that before. Living at the edge of intentional failure. Why are these two things so important for personal growth, in your opinion?
Because I think that's where most of the knowledge exists. And this is a great segue from humility and insecurity and overcompensation of those things, because it makes this concept really hard and almost certainly unlikely to do, because we're somewhat programmed cognitively and mentally to protect our emotional well-being. So when things go wrong, when we do mess things up, then these opportunities to blame, shift, and the excuses just come pouring in, because it protects our emotional well-being, which is correlated directly to physical health. And the brain wants us to survive above all else. So it's a very easy thread to walk, which is why it's understandable to know why this is so difficult. But I do think that if you adopt this kind of train to failure mentality that we see in the teams, this is how we are as good as we are with the things that we do because of how often we mess it up prior to game day. And
Yeah.
if you in order to win in those failure is not an option scenarios, you are going to have fucked it up, excuse my language, so many times prior, because that's where the wisdom is. And so I think when you have the confidence, when you operationalize the integrity, it allows you to operate in that capacity as an individual, and then maybe more importantly as a team. And this is something that we stress to, the clients and people we get to work with. It's like, this is how you continue to grow. And this also very quickly dovetails into the realm of leadership, because like that's what sets that tone. That's what's fostering the culture, is you have to live it yourself, man. And again, many, CEOs or EVPs or head coaches or captains are like, well, what if I'm seen as a liability? And it's like, we're working in the same loop here, guys. Like, these undeniable themes of human performance, leadership, team building, and winning are all correlated. It's just, and you start to see those eyes open up where it's like, oh man, like that is where the value is. It's like, yes. And then once you own that, and the junior, newer teammates, members, employees start to see like, man, this is how this is just done, then it allows them to start to push the envelope a little bit more, push the needle, mess things up, knowing that I'm going to get better because of this, and I'm not going to be just destroyed in this community because this is just the way we operate.
Yeah, it's a recipe, or rather, it's an ingredient in that recipe of success, right? If you don't do it, then ultimately, when it is game day, because you haven't failed, because you haven't learned from that failure in prepping for game day, you're going to fail on game day. So where would you rather fail, right? It's the old those who sweat more in training bleed less in combat.
Sure,
it's the same exact thing, and I'm sure I butchered that quote, but it's something to that effect. So what about your family, brother? How did your family feel about you returning to combat? How did they support you? What was that whole role? And maybe not just your family, but whatever your support system was, your friends, your colleagues, what did that look like?
Yeah, man. It's, when you face a catastrophic injury and you're on the road to recovery and you're in critical condition and you were supposed to have died, 100 times according to science, I use those absolute terms sparingly, but in this case, it's accurate. Everyone around me would say anything to me that they thought would help my recovery. They thought they would help my mental state. So as I'm there on tons of drugs I'm going back to the teams, everyone around me is like, of course you are, man. Like you got this, whatever you set your mind to, you can do. And that kind of like positive talk. As the journey continues, the same people at a certain point are going to be like, hey man, like, at what point are we going to start getting a little realistic here? At what point are we going to start getting a little practical? Because like, you're saying that you're going to do something that has literally never been done before, and probably for good reason. So, and that for many of them comes from a place of love. It's like, they don't want to see you set your sights on something that they think is impossible and that you fail, and it just like crushes you and sends you down a very negative road. I was able to recognize that pretty early on. So as I'm talking to my father, for example, who's my best friend on this planet, he had me at 20. So we're not all that far in age now that we're both grown as men. A guy that I love and have an enormous amount of respect for and have learned a ton from. When he's coming at me going, hey man, like, listen, I love you and I know you better than most people. I don't think this is going to happen. And he just wanted to be very blunt and direct, which I love and respect. I could look at him dead in his eyes and go, you know what, Dad, like, I know where you're coming from. I respect where you're coming from. In fact, I appreciate where you're coming from. I just happen to disagree on this one issue. So I'm going to continue to move in my direction, and you're going to support me because I know you will, and we're going to figure it out together. And in today's world, that may seem insane that you can have a close relationship with somebody who disagrees with you. However, there's also a lot of positive value that comes in that, regardless of what you may be talking about. So I was able to see that for what it was, but I did notice that shift in 100% fully backed support, rah-rah cheerleader stuff to a little bit more expectation management type language coming out of these same exact people. So it does get to be a little bit of a lonely, road that you're on, even though I was physically and metaphorically surrounded by amazing human beings that were enabling me to do all kinds of stuff that I would not have been able to do by myself. But it's a lonely road, and you got to be willing to walk that path and keep that conviction in your faith and in your belief, even though you may be on an island with those beliefs. Do you believe in it enough to continue to press on?
Were you married with kids at the time?
No. So my wife, we'd known each other for about a decade, but she's also active duty Army Special Operations. And actually, she was deployed during the same time as me to Afghanistan. Now, she was working out of Bagram. I was out in the mountains in Wardak. And it was during that deployment that we started to kind of rely on each other as kind of a support system. And we both realized, even though we were in two separate sides of the country, it was like, man, there may be actually something here that neither of us really thought. We were just like buddies. We trained MMA together and jiu-jitsu, and we worked together, quite a bit. So, and I was like, oh, I think this might be like a real thing. And then of course, all this happens, and, she eventually returns home. So our relationship, in terms of being more than kind of friends, started at my absolute lowest point. So we didn't have the kids. We weren't married yet. It's a quick story I like to share. And it's one I rarely talk about. So you guys can blast this out. And I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard this on a public platform, but after a year at Walter Reed, I returned back to Fort Bragg, and actually I moved in with my now wife. We weren't married yet. I moved in with her, and I was there for maybe a week. And this entire time, I'm like mapping out my game plan, like my hourly breakdown, my macros, my sets and reps. Like I've got a full 24-hour period. That's actually, I put it in my book so people could see what a 24-hour looked like. And when I say that this thing was dialed into the minute, I mean that it was like literally dialed into the minute. And every single task that was in a 24-hour period was directly correlated to this one end state. That was it. When I say burn the boats, it's an easy thing to say. It's a much more difficult thing to do. I mean that literally. So I got this whole thing mapped out. I got like notebooks and like all this other shit. And I'm like, hey, babe, here's what is about to happen. And I just want to be very honest and direct with you. I'm going to live my life as close to perfect to this as I possibly can. And I don't know when this will end. I think one of two things is going to happen. I'm going to make it back to the teams, or I'm going to die trying. And I'm actually fine with either of those outcomes. And what that means for us is there will be no fancy dinners. There will be no vacations. There will be, if someone dies, like I'm not going to the funeral. Like literally, this is it. And I understand if you don't want to be a part of this with me.
Wow.
Guys, I went into that conversation with every expectation that she was going to hear me out respectfully and then say, you know what, man, like, I think you're a little crazy. And like, I don't think I want to get on this train with you. I went into that conversation with that in mind. And it's a moment I look back on, which is part of the reason why maybe I don't talk about it much, is I could see then the life that we are living together now. I could see it 13 years ago. I could see the kids. I could see the white picket fence. I could see the dogs. I could see our happiness. Like I knew she was my life teammate. Like this was my soulmate that I'm supposed to be attached to for my life. I believed it then 100%, but I was willing to let that subside for this desired goal. And it's a moment I look back on with around 50-50 pride, because it was a really hard thing I had to do. And I'm prideful that I was able to do it, and 50% guilt, where I look back, I just feel like horrible about myself because I look at our family and the life we live today. And had she done the practical thing and walked away, we wouldn't have this, like my two sons, like they wouldn't exist. And like, how horrible would that be? So it's a little emotional retrospective journey that I don't go on very often, because it's still pretty emotionally impactful to me as I sit here talking to you guys now.
Yeah.
All that to say, she was on board. She was basically like, let's fucking go. I'm on this ride with you. And not only was she a support asset, she was like a teammate. We were like getting after it side by side. And had it not been for her and her strength and her vision and her love of me and her willingness to believe that what I'd set my sights on was even somewhat possible, then, I'm not the man I am today. And that's something of an understatement.
Yeah, man. I sounds like a hell of a woman, a badass. And I had to laugh there because my wife and I were also overseas together. We were in Tarin Kowt together. So we had a little Afghanistan romance ourselves.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah. And of the two of us, she's definitely the more badass. I'm curious. I got to go look at this 24-hour thing in your book. If there's any time in there for her. I know you said no romantic dinners, no vacations, no funerals. But was there 2 or 3 minutes just to hang out with her?
There actually was. Yeah.
Okay,
It's like
good.
literally like my last like 30-minute block. It just says like Tony and the dogs. Like that's it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. Thank you. And to have that, I think, I don't know, we could really truly be or really access our potential without having someone there to really support. So that's just a great story. Well, let's get into more of the impossible, right? So there are probably a lot of listeners out there, or a few that are really like struggling with like this whole idea of impossible, and they might throw so much in front of the word in order to kind of like step back and be like, you know what, I can't do this. So what would you recommend? Like, where's a good place to start to kind of chip away at this idea of impossible?
You literally just said what I would respond with when you said chip away. And I'll expound in a second. But I think first is plant a flag, identify the target, i.e. create the mission. What do you want to do? Or maybe more importantly, who do you want to be? And that can be a difficult thing to do. I do talk about in Objective Secure a couple different COAs or courses of action to help an individual identify what that could be. And very briefly, one would just be let your kind of soul talk to you, like ask the question and then shut the hell up and listen, because chances are it's not going to show up as like a blast to the face. It's going to show up almost in the form of like a whisper. And if you're not listening and if you're not engaging in that internal dialogue, then you're not going to hear it. If you were to do that practice for a certain amount of time and you're like, man, I'm not hearing anything, then the second recommendation would be to focus on your talents, i.e. the thing or things that you do best with the least amount of effort. And everyone has at least one of those. You may need to figure out what it is, but everyone has something that they do best with the least amount of effort. And then when you stack skill on top of talent, now statistically, you're moving into a great direction where you have a higher likelihood of success. One of the elements that's not in the book, that's just been more recent reflection, is to what I call weaponized curiosity, which is just start trying stuff, man. And I think that actually may be the most significantly powerful way to identify a mission or something you're passionate about, have a sense of purpose, is by execution. Like that's how I fell in love with being a soldier. I didn't have a sense of passion or purpose prior to enlisting. I was pissed off from 9/11 and I was like, fuck you, I'm coming to get some. And that was it. And once I started doing it was when I fell in love with it. So just start trying stuff, get out there, especially for the younger people listening. I mean, if I could go back, I'd probably do quite a bit of things differently. But if you're in your like 20s, man, like now is the time to just start doing things. You may hate it. It may seem silly. You're like, I don't know, go like just blunt force trauma execution, because I would be willing to bet that is how you're going to start to feel some kind of connection towards an industry or a task or a lifestyle or a thing. So what is it? Identifying that and then chip away. I think that most of us make the mistake of going too big too soon. And because you get that burst of motivation, you watch that, Jocko Willink video and you're like, fuck yeah, here we go. And you go from like 0 to 100. And it's like, I've been waking up at 9 o'clock every morning. I'm going to start waking up at 3:30. It's like, you may be able to sustain that for a week or two, or maybe a month, but statistically speaking, the wheels are going to start to fall off. Because it was just too big too soon, because that burst of motivation is going to fade. And now you're in the fucking grind and you don't have that to leverage. So while you may be feeling that surge of enthusiasm, employ discipline almost in the opposite direction, where you're going to intentionally pull back on the throttle, pull back on the chain on purpose. And just to use what time we wake up as an example, if it's currently 9 a.m. and the goal is 4, so you can live like Jocko Willink, start at 8:45. Like that degree of incremental, almost unnoticed type of adjustment. Do that for a week or two, and then back it up to 8:40, then back it up to 8:30.
Yep.
In 90 days, you have just engineered an entire 90 minutes or whatever it is, and you really didn't feel the discomfort at all, because you were just stacking up those little tiny wins that compound over time, and you've earned that automation because you've done it strategically and tactically. So I would just say, man, patience is a tool, That's not to be confused with procrastination. Those are two wildly different things. Patience is a skill. You've made it this far in life. I don't care how old you are. You've made it to now. And now you're saying, you know what? Like, I need to make a change. I want to go bigger. I want to make a drastic pivot. Awesome. Outstanding. Identify what the thing is. Great. And then start making those little tiny, almost unnoticeable adjustments. And then in 90 days, 6 months, and certainly 12 months, you're a whole different person.
It's that 1% difference, right?
Yeah, exactly. Increment. I just want to say one thing, that binge watching and eating ice cream are not skills. I would not, somebody, I can eat the fuck out of a tub of ice cream, but that's not a skill, everybody. But anyway,
Dude,
Jon,
you haven't seen me eat ice cream.
Jon's got some technique, his own fancy spoon or something.
Weaponized curiosity against ice cream.
Purposeful practice. There it is.
Right. but I love that term, that weaponized curiosity too. We had Nate Boyer on not long ago.
Oh yeah, Nate, great dude.
Yeah, great dude, right? And he's done this litany of things. Like he's been SF. He went to Sudan as a volunteer. He played football with the Longhorns and then with the Seahawks, and now he's making movies. I mean, I think he's like addicted to that weaponized curiosity, man. It's a great term. So I love that. Will, I know you had something on sacrifice there. What, you got anything?
Well, no, like you mentioned it earlier, Nick, about sacrifice, and that's part of the growth strategy. If you really want to change, you really want to, get after it, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And I enjoy the story, in your book about making sacrifices, but I think it's important, for people to hear, what that looks like and how to go about doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we've almost come full circle here, because I started off talking about discipline. It's coming right back around, because I would argue that sacrifice is a subset requirement of discipline. And our definition of discipline would be to exchange what you want now for what you want most. So I'm going to give up the thing I want now, and I'm going to exchange that for the thing I want most. I want to write a book. I want to start a business. I want to play football on Sundays. Like, whatever the thing is, I'm going to exchange this for that. Well, by definition, exchange, there are two things that are happening with any exchange in any kind anywhere in the world, and there's a give and a take. That's like the definition of exchange. I'm giving you something, Will, and you're going to give me something. Well, the thing that I'm giving up is literally the definition of sacrifice. Like, I'm giving up the thing and I'm going to replace it with X. So by virtue of those definitions, sacrifice is a requirement to live with any kind of discipline. It has to hurt, at least a little bit. You have to be giving up something that you are fortunate to have, something that you may be considered you are blessed to have, a warm, comfy bed. Talk about a blessing. How many people right now on this planet don't have that, and you do? That's amazing. You've earned it. It's great. I'm not saying it was handed to you. A lot of things had to be done for you to earn that bed, but you have a warm, cozy bed. Are you willing to give that up in that moment and replace it, exchange it with something else more in line with what you want to achieve? So it has to suck. And we use, embrace the suck is an expression you hear throughout the military. And now I feel like it's growing into business and athletics. Sure. It's like all over the place, because the secret's out. You may not want that to be the truth, but it has to hurt. In fact, the pain is an indicator that you are on the path worthwhile. And in fact, if you are going distances of time without feeling that discomfort, that's the point when you may need to like really hit the panic button and go, wait a minute, like I have been way too comfortable for way too long. By definition, there is no way I am progressing towards the thing I want, or at a minimum, I'm just moving too slow. I got to up the bar. I got to raise the ante. I got to start moving a little bit more aggression. So sacrifice is a non-negotiable. It's going to hurt, but you know what? Like anything else, the more you do it, the more resilient you get, the more you recognize, like, you know what? Like, yeah, that bed is great, but I did it and I showed up and I'm fine. And you do that with enough repetition and it just becomes that much more automated.
It's part of the recipe for success.
Yep. Again, there it is. Another ingredient, man. We're cooking it up right here in the show.
That's it. Let's do it. Let's cook it up.
Well, hey, man, so being a chief in the Army. So for those listening, it was really confusing when I first joined the joint space. And by joint, what I mean is Army, Navy, Air Force. So in the Navy, we have chiefs who are some of the senior enlisted officers, kind of senior NCOs that you would have the equivalent of in the Army. But but we call them chiefs. And then I was sitting next to a chief warrant officer in the Army, and they were calling them chiefs. I was like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea. But anyhow, you are a chief warrant officer in the Army. We call you chief, right? As a leader in the military or elsewhere, how do you inspire and instill resilience in others? And I would say, is it different for those in the military versus those in civilian context, or is it the same?
I would argue at the core level, it's the same. Tactically and mechanically, that could look different based on the industry or the situation or the people or the strength of the team, the needs of the individual at any given time. But I think the underlying theme is the same. And I would stand by this, that the most powerful means of influence and or inspiration, which is a subset of influence, it's just directly correlated to emotions. Making someone feel a certain way is the definition of inspiration, or to inspire. So you're tapping into emotions, is by virtue of implementation. That's it. It's by virtue of you doing it yourself, like, period. And I mean, actions speak louder than words. We've got plenty of kind of cliche expressions, but the whole do as I say, not as I do concept, it doesn't land. It just doesn't work. Even with my kids, like my oldest is 8, my youngest is 4. Like, if I want him to eat his broccoli and I take mine and I scrape it in the garbage and I say, eat your broccoli because it's good for you, he may do it because I'm his father and he maybe is fearful of the consequences of not doing what I said, but that's not inspiration, and it's a lousy form of influence. For me to create that effect that can last longer term, he's watching me eat the broccoli. Now, I may be grimacing and going, man, this tastes like shit, but I'm doing it anyway because it's good for me. And he's like, oh, you know what? Like, dad's doing it. Okay, cool. Like, that is how you effectively lead. That is how you influence. That is how you inspire. It's by virtue of action. I would say, again, that while I can be a source of motivation to people, which is an amazing blessing, and I'm truly humbled and honored by that, inspiration has a much longer shelf life. And it's more so by virtue of not what I'm saying to people. It's just by virtue of the way I live and them getting a glimpse of that through whatever conduit. And that is a much more enduring, lasting effect.
Yeah. And I love that you said, that it's an honor and you're humbled by it, because I think there are so many people who are inspirers out there, or influencers, whatever you want to call them. And I'm not meaning social media influencers. I'm meaning true influencers that take that for granted and then do something outside of what may be the norm for them. And people see that, and then they get influenced negatively, right? They see, let's just say, Nick, for example, tomorrow you don't get up in the morning, you don't work out, you're not eating your broccoli, whether it's for your kids or for those who follow you elsewhere. Then they say, oh, well, I don't have to get up out of bed. So there's danger in being that inspiration on the negative side, right? We could negatively inspire people. So just a comment. I love that you're continuing to inspire people in a positive way, and that you are humbled by it, coming back to where we talked about humility and confidence being a main driver in leadership and discipline. So no question there, more of a comment.
I appreciate that. No, thank you.
Yeah, well, right on, brother.
Yeah, leading by example is so key. I mean, to doing anything and leading and really influence people is like, be the person that's doing that thing and have others follow your example. But what's next for you, Nick? Like 5-10 years from now, looking ahead, like, where do you see, you have a big platform, like your book is incredible. Like you're just known, for overcoming the impossible. Do you have an idea what might be in store for you in the next decade?
Yeah, man. I mean, not only do I have the idea, but I've had the privilege to begin executing on it now for the last few years. Started my business 3.5 or so years ago. Precision Components. It's our B2B service provider. We do leadership development, team building, resilience, performance wellness. It's started out without knowing exactly what it was, which I think is also a common theme amongst like entrepreneurs and business owners. It's like, I don't really even know what this thing is, but I'm going to start figuring it out.
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to be our podcast, right? We didn't know. We had no idea. What I'm doing. Yeah.
One of the greatest pieces of advice that I got from a colleague, and he was talking to me about business and entrepreneurship, but I think this really stems across life, is he goes, listen, man, nobody knows what they're doing. But some people, are just
So
willing to
true.
do it anyway.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
that kind of is the whole game. He's like, that's it. So just know that going in. I don't care who you're looking at, who you're listening to, learning from. No one knows what they're doing. Some are just willing to do it anyway. I'm like,
yeah.
well
And
said.
I would 100% agree with that, in that, some of the people that I coach in the executive space, they have hundreds, if not thousands of people working for them. And when I close the door and speak with them one-on-one, they're like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. It's like, no, I know, man. That's kind of why I'm here. We're going to figure it out. Military transition, because I'm active duty, and still my, personal, professional endeavors is still a side hustle. It's still a passion project. Like, most of my professional bandwidth has to go to that of the United States Army and those that I get to serve alongside of, and those that I get to serve as the American people. But I am really curious and excited to see what that project looks like once I just dump the 100% of my professional bandwidth against that project. And listen, military transition is hot. And my wife's going through it right now. She just started retiring a couple months ago, 25 years of active service. And I'm biased, but she's a unique asset that's done some very different things throughout her career. And largely because of that, she's got options and opportunities from like all the 3-letter agencies and private and corporate and, contracting. She's leaving under her own terms, endless options, almost to the point where it's a problem because there's so many options, but all those stars are aligned for her. And I'm alongside this, with her, watching her go through it. And even under those circumstances, it's still really hard for her to hang it up as she's doing it right now, which is giving me a whole lot of additional kind of clarity and context and perspective over the rest of the service member community that may be leaving under less than ideal circumstances by virtue of an injury or making a bonehead mistake that cost them their career. Like this, people get out of the military for a whole bunch of different reasons, and not all of them are positioned like she is. How much more difficult is it, or can it be, or should it be for them? And it's just giving me some additional insights. I'm very fortunate that I was able to identify my next purpose in life beyond military service now 4 or 5 years ago. And then having the opportunity to have been surrounded by some great people that gave me some great insights and some guidance on how to start figuring things out. So I feel quite confident that it will still almost certainly be really difficult to hang it up as I approach the 20-year mark right now. But I'm also really excited and eager and grateful to be able to move into that next chapter of life and see where it goes.
Heck yeah, man. When's that date?
I'm coming up on 19 years right now. So assuming I get out at 20, which I think I probably will, I will likely start with the retirement process in the next 6-7 months or so.
Right on, man. Well, if there's anything that I can do to help you with that process, it's become something that's near and dear to my heart. Feel free to reach out to me.
I'm sure I will. I appreciate that, Jon. Thank you.
Yeah, brother. And then I'm sure if your quote unquote side hustle becomes your main effort when you retire, if it's anything like what you do with the rest of your life and applying that discipline minute for minute, you are absolutely going to crush it on the outside.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that upcoming retirement. For people who want to get a hold of you for your side hustle or anything else, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, go to our main website. It's precisioncomponentsllc.com. And then it's got links of, ways to get a hold of me and kind of all the rest of the stuff. So that would be the one-stop shop.
There it is, man. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. Will, over to you, my brother.
No, thank you. And what you're saying at the end there about just getting after it and going after what's next and just kind of falling into, what's next is it reminds me of a Dostoevsky quote. In the end of the quote, he says an intelligent man cannot seriously become anything. Only a fool can become something.
Oh, wow.
And it's a really great quote. There's a longer quote, but it's just that's, what I mean? If you're in your, what they say, paralysis by analysis or analysis by paralysis, it's you're never going to do anything. You just got to get out there. You just got to go get it. I thought it'd be great to close this. We're talking about impossible by a great quote is attributed to Muhammad Ali, but actually it's from an Adidas campaign and is by a creative professional writer called Amy Leto. And she says, Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in a world they haven't been given. Than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact; it's an option. Impossible is not a fact; it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration; it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. Nick Lavery, we really appreciate you having you on the show today.
Boom.
Yeah,
Mic drop, Will. I can't even attempt to add anything after that. That was brilliant.
I mean, you added so much to our community and your wisdom. And Nick, like, hopefully we'll have you back on again sometime. Like, I just love what you're doing. I love your vibe. We really appreciate it. And just thank you for being the force that you are in the world and helping people wake up to the who they could fucking be. Yeah, because a lot of people, they get locked in how they normally do things and like, oh my God, and they try something or try to start something. The next day they're back to whatever they're usually doing. So hopefully everybody that's listening, to this episode can really get some fire under their ass and really make some shit happen.
They're going to, man. Chip away.
I appreciate it, boys. I love what you guys are doing. I love your work.
Thank you.
Jon. I mean, some of your LinkedIn posts are just like, I mean, they're so spot on. They're so well done.
Man.
Yeah, he's great.
Insightful. And you're willing to take some risks, man, and get out there and be authentic and speak your purpose and be willing to take the blowback. And I love, and I genuinely love and respect that, man. So love the work you guys are doing. Looking forward to our next time together, man. In the meantime, we'll just keep getting after it.
There you go. Well, Will, Nick, been a pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us. For those listening and watching, we really appreciate it. Until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.